Peace in your country doesn't depend anymore only on you and your people. It depends on those next to you.
Putin is inflicting appalling devastation and horror. Bombing apartment buildings, maternity wards, hospitals.
Public reports are horrendous. The classified reports are even worse.
What's at stake here are the principles that the United States and the United Nations and across the world stand for. It's about freedom. It's about the right of people to determine their own future. It's about making sure Ukraine will never be a victory for Putin.
Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace.
Today, the United States showed why many consider us the leader of the free world, pledging $800 million in military aid to help Ukraine fight off Russia. That makes $1 billion in weapons and supplies given to Ukraine just this week.
These are direct transfers of equipment from our Department of Defense to the Ukrainian military to help them as they fight against this invasion.
The new package includes 800 anti-aircraft systems, 9,000 shoulder-mounted missiles to take out Russian tanks, and 7,000 small arms like machine guns and grenades.
This will include drones, which demonstrates our commitment to sending our most cutting-edge systems to Ukraine for its defense.
And next door to Ukraine and Poland, the U.S. is preparing in case Putin decides to extend his war outside Ukraine's borders. CBS News' Nora O'Donnell took a tour of the weapons staging area with the commander. They had to hide his identity for security purposes.
When did it get here?
So these systems have been on ground for about a week.
I feel like things are ramping up.
Well, so I know there's a lot of tensions right now.
The extra help for fighting Russia came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed Congress today. He asked for more support from the U.S. and NATO. He specifically requested the creation of a no-fly zone to keep Russian aircrafts out of Ukraine. Now, Vladimir Zelenskyy also says NATO should help Ukraine by giving air defense missiles. He called for more sanctions targeting Russian lawmakers. He specifically called on President Biden, saying he has a responsibility as the leader of the free world.
Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace. Peace in your country doesn't depend anymore only on you and your people. It depends on those next to you, on those who are strong.
Vladimir Zelenskyy says the international community came to help defend the U.S. in times of crisis like Pearl Harbor and 9/11. He says he wants more help protecting the people of his homeland, especially when children are dying every day in attacks.
Today my age stopped when the heart of more than 100 children stopped beating. I see no sense in life if it cannot stop the death.
After hearing the address, North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis addressed the Ukrainian president's testimony. He says the U.S. has already done a lot to help Ukraine, and the results are noticeable.
It's having a more dramatic effect sooner than we expected. And that gets the Russian people thinking about what's really going on in Ukraine. Right now, the Russian government is misleading the Russian people. It's going to become increasingly difficult to do that when these sanctions just continue to layer in and target the oligarchs, target the industries that we know that the Russian government relies on.
Senator Tillis is actually one of the leading voices on this conflict in D.C. You know, obviously he represents North Carolina, but he's also the co-chair of the Senate NATO Observer Group. He's even attended the NATO conference before. He says the way to end this conflict is to keep putting pressure on Putin.
Putin has demonstrated that whoever planned this invasion they grossly underestimated the NATO response and the Ukrainian response. So a part of this has to be progress on the ground, stalling Putin's efforts, and then a key part of it are increased sanctions.
Right now, U.S. sanctions have focused on crushing Russia's economy from every side. We banned imports of goods like vodka, seafood, diamonds. We've also blocked all Russian oil imports. The U.S. has also seized assets from Russian elites, like some of their yachts. NATO cut off their access to the SWIFT banking system, and that means Russian citizens can't buy most international products. All of the sanctions have caused the value of the Russian currency to plummet. A Ukrainian economist says the sanctions are having an impact, but she wonders if it's enough to sway Putin into pulling back.
The first one narrative is that the oligarchs somehow are going to miss their yachts and they're going to become angry and will stop Putin. That's an assumption here is that it's oligarchs who control Putin, when in reality it's Putin, his KGB and state police who runs the state, and oligarchs are just puppets.
She thinks more Russian people support the war than it appears from the outside, too. The main way the Ukrainian president says the U.S. could do more is by helping block off Ukraine's airspace so Russian fighter jets can't enter. Senator Tom Tillis says this move could have some serious consequences.
If you establish a no-fly zone, then what happens when a Russian plane crosses over and it has to be taken out? Then you're talking about a response from a NATO country, which lays a predicate for World War III.
That's not how former National Security Advisor for President Trump, Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, sees it.
I don't think the World War III rhetoric is super helpful, right? Because it kind of plays into Putin's hands. And what he's trying to do is to threaten an escalation of the war so that we will throttle back.
He thinks it's a bad policy to announce what the U.S. will and won't do in response to Putin.
For too long, we made it too easy for him. We vacated the Black Sea. We withdrew everybody from Ukraine. We said all the things we're not going to do. And, in retrospect, it seems kind of almost that we, in some ways, green-lighted the invasion with some of these actions.
This week, the White House again said the smart strategy is providing Ukraine with weapons so they can defend their own country.
A no-fly zone is escalatory and could prompt a war with Russia, a major nuclear power.
So for now, the idea of a no-fly zone enforced by NATO and the U.S. is not taking off. Now, lawmakers and military experts all think Ukraine has done a really good job fending off Russia on their own so far with help and aid. Now, they say Putin did expect an easy victory, but now that it's dragged on for a few weeks, they think we're in for this right here, a long conflict.
And no one ever thought it was going to be easy. We always know it would be a long slog. But what Vladimir Putin has now encountered, I think he thought people were going to be greeting him with roses. Instead, it was Molotov cocktails.
President Biden says he expects this conflict to continue for a while. As the war goes on, some Ukrainians worry people around the world will become numb to images of their suffering, that Americans and others will lose outrage over Putin's attack. It is important we all remember millions of people are having their life uprooted in unthinkable ways right now. And as President Biden said earlier, what's at stake here is not just Ukraine. It's about the principles our own country was founded on: freedom and the right to choose your own fate.